Hello. Today we're speaking socialization and social isolation. Now, what does social mean for us? It means to be in contact with other people and to be able to communicate with them. Now, for most of us, we know language, like I'm speaking here now, as a form of communication, and we know that there are different types of languages. Except for the audio, the language we hear now, there are other types of languages like sign language. There's body language. Facial expressions is part of your body language. So there's many ways of communicating. Now, we can have a look at, first of all, how do we start communication? How do we start socialization? We cannot do communication on our own. We have to be social beings. So when we look at, for example, when we are small and maybe intrauterine, the brain develops little bit of hooks. Whatever we hear, whatever we experience, whatever we feel inside intrauterine, we may have this little hook and something goes on it. Whatever meaning that being attributes to it, it will grow if it's being reinforced. If not, it will just simply disappear. But now suppose that this particular individual has received something before they were born, and they are able to come into the world with at least recognizing maybe the mother's voice or the father's voice, and that becomes reaffirmed by hearing the voice constantly. Now, as the child grows or as we grow, more things may be added, and by the time, let's say, this become there's another category. This is primarily our voices, little feelings, etc. And as we grow, we need a different category. For example, we're now going to have to learn the names of foods, etc. Let's say we have something else that is more colorful, right? That says, I've discovered something new and exciting. We have, for example, something about toys, etc., that we have, and we have these little hooks that people we see they have to be put onto them, onto these hooks. There has to be assistance to get those onto the hooks. And as we grow, these hooks are reinforced. We may have more of these small hooks, and by the time we get to school, there's enough on these hooks for teachers to work with. um, these hooks grow and they have to become stronger. And as we go through school, we see we have something that is a lot stronger. Reinforcement has occurred of, for example, the mother's voice that we see that was so small in the beginning. Here's mother's voice, and mother's voice now says, if I say it like this, that's what it means. If I speak softly, that's what it means. And we learn the verbal language. So as these ideas are entrenched into the brain, these little loops become bigger. Right? As it becomes entrenched into the brain, the loops become bigger. It gets reinforced. We have, again, different categories of hooks. We can, for example, say this is now the teacher's voice, and this will be voice recognition. We may have things that, as they say, geography, where I live and where other people live, etc. So we have different types of categories. But in school, they often do not put it on like we do. It is often a matter of throwing. If it hooks in, fine. If it doesn't, you fail. We have to remember that we have to reinforce all the time. Whether it's at school or at home, reinforcement is very, very important. And like I said, different categories. Now we see there may be another hook coming up for a totally different category. And this is by chance, driving, the environment, etc., totally by chance, and it goes on. It sticks. It is something beautiful, and that remains. Beautiful experiences, children tend to remain a lot longer, although traumatic experience may be entrenched very differently. But let's concentrate on the beautiful experience and let's reinforce that. Now, as we grow, all these experiences And whatever we are exposed to become more and more. The hooks become more and more. The way the hooks are filled up becomes more and more. And we may find that, for example, if we have two hooks and we have things onto the hooks, there may be bridges being built between the hooks from that hook to that hook, so that we have associations that occur. And these get reinforced all the time. And that is socialization. So the more we socialize with people who may know more than we do, we learn more, and these hooks become more and more reinforced, they become more prominent, and they become more colorful depending on what we experience. Now, when we have to write exams, obviously, if it's something like of a content subject, we have to go and get these off the hooks. And remember, this was the thing, I need to write it down. Sometimes I cannot find the answers. And the reason for that being, maybe there's no such thing that it disappeared, because I might temporarily have forgotten it. And just as I walk out of the classroom, after I finished the exam, I walked out by the door and suddenly I remember it. Where was it all the time? It's this that I needed to get. But look at whatever is in front of it. What we have to really hunt for it. And maybe there were so many things that was happening that was going through my mind, I couldn't remember it. And as I walked out, my mind cleared up, and suddenly it is there. It didn't disappear. It is still there. So forgetting is temporary, unless we have amnesia, unless we have brain damage or something like it. So when you forget something, even if you get older, don't stress about it. Sometimes it's not just this type of effect that we have brain fogging, where there may be not such a lot of things, but let's say it's just these two things, but it's so muddled up and clouding the other stuff in our brain that we simply cannot function. And that we will deal with sometime later. That's brain fogging. But simply just to show that communication is part of socialization. And when we stop socializing, right? When people get older, they tend to have fewer friends, and these things deteriorate. There's no reinforcement of anything anymore. And it's like they forget it. It's still there, but it's like it's dust, full of dust. It's sitting in a cupboard somewhere. Nobody's using it. I'm not using it anymore. So it's important that we constantly keep the brain functional, that we keep it active by various means. If it's reading magazines, if it's chatting with people. And that is why I know there's a stigma to people putting their parents or elders in a care facility. But the advantage of that is that they are with peers where they can talk, whereas at home they might be at home, home alone the whole day, nobody to talk to. Children come home in the evening from work. There's no time for them. So during the time that they spend at a facility, they have activities. Even if it's maybe during the day that they have to go to a facility, these activities keep the mind active. And as long as we keep the mind active, these little things on your hooks will remain functional. They will remain polished, and they won't become full of dust so that we can't see it anymore, that we can't find what we're looking for anymore. It is still there. Remember, it's in the brain. Unless we have a way of erasing it, it is still there. If we start isolating ourselves even, I don't talk to anybody for a long time, it may be good to clear the mind, but we need to communicate in some way or other with the rest of the world. It's nice to have time out. It's nice to be on your own for a while, but communication allows us to grow. Communication keeps the brain going, and that is why activities like puzzles, walks, picnics, or whatever the sport, whatever the case may be, keep at it, keep going, so that the brain can stay active, so that the brain cells can, the chemicals in there can continue to be produced, and it doesn't go stale, for example. It's like a car standing for a long time. It takes a while to start. Parts may have become rusted, etc. The brain may undergo the same processes. So keep that brain active. Allow the elders to socialize. Do not hide them. Even if they have a bit of a problem. We know incontinence become a problem and people start hiding their elders in the room or wherever. That lack of socialization actually leads to a deterioration of these little rings on your hooks, and that sometimes it's called maybe senile dementia. It's called no, maybe Alzheimer's or whatever the case may be. Alzheimer's is a deterioration of the brain itself. So if we keep active, if you keep the brain active, we keep everything active, we keep our bodies active, stay active, stay smiling, stay young at heart, and the brain will be functioning as good as it was 6 years old. I think six is the key figure. We said in the previous video on food that between the ages of 5 and 7, we need specific foods, lots of foods to get the brain development going maximum, to maximize brain functioning in future. So if we keep at 6, if we keep our lives like we were at 6, if we eat like we were at 6, maybe we'll be much more pleasant, much more happy adults, much more fit, and just healthy. So keep going at it. Keep these rings colorful. Keep them bright, whatever they are. Whether they are on one holder or on many different ones, keep your life bright. Keep them there and reinforce, polish them as often as possible. And happy thinking. Thank you.